And Mark has a phenomenal story to share with you of how he came to the United States with $40 in his pocket from his home in Jamaica. And that started him on a path that surprisingly took him into Toastmasters and surprisingly took him to the World Championship, which completely changed his career, completely changed the entire direction of his life, and has changed everything that he's done in his life. But as I talked to Mark, he was sharing with me how there was a seed that was planted very early in his life for what he's doing today. I think you're going to love this interview. As I always say, you're going to love these interviews because I love talking to each one of these guys. So here's Mark Brown with his speech and his interview.
Our next speaker, Mark Brown, a second chance. A second chance, Mark Brown.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Mr. Toastmaster and friends, that phrase is fairly common. At first look, we automatically draw quick conclusions about people for various reasons. It could be their appearance, other people's opinions, our own preconceived ideas, or just plain ignorance. We don't always give a second chance. Let me explain. Recently, my wife Andrea, our 3 children and I sat down to watch a very important film, Beauty and the Beast. Oh, you've seen it? Then you know that this is a film you can't watch just once. Your children won't let you. I've seen it 13 times since last Monday. Don't get me wrong. The movie is great for children. The music, the magic, the mystery. But the message is important for all of us. Picture this. The villain is the influential Gaston. He's tall, dark, handsome. I can relate to that. Gaston is in love with the beautiful Belle, but she spurns him and befriends the Beast. Well, in a fit of jealousy, Gaston uses his influence and turns the entire village against Belle and the Beast. Except for seeing his face once in a magic mirror, the villagers know nothing about the Beast. But Gaston, he fuels their fear of the unknown and whips them into a frenzy. This angry mob cuts down trees and they make clubs. They brandish knives, pitchforks, and torches. And they march through the forest singing, "We don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us, and this monster is mysterious at least. Bring your guns, bring your knives, save your children and your wife. We save our village and our lives. We'll kill the Beast." Why? For years, the Beast had lived in isolation, but no one took the time to say, wait, what's he really like? Who is this Beast? Oh no, he wasn't given a second chance. And the irony is, the real Beast was in the hearts of the angry mob. He was a victim of the real Beast. Intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. Oh well, it's a movie, it's a fantasy, but intolerance, indifference, and ignorance are a reality. We've got to deal with it every single day. I'll give you an example. Pat Harper, a beautiful network news anchor, reported on the plight of the homeless in New York City a few years ago. To appreciate their circumstance, she dressed as they dressed. She walked as they walked. She lived as they lived for several days. She carried a concealed microphone, and a hidden camera crew followed her every move. It was Christmas time, a season of love, cheer, and goodwill. But here's what the camera saw. I'll never forget this. It was snowing, bitterly cold, and there she sat, huddled in a doorway, shivering, trying to fend off the bone-chilling winds. But hardly anyone noticed her. Those who did hurried by. Some looked right at her and yet right past her. Others looked right through her as they thought, homeless, useless, worthless. No one took a second look. To them, this beauty had a beastly appearance. But the real beast was in the hearts of those who treated her with disdain. Oh yes, the beast of intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. The sad truth is, it happens all the time. I'm not just pointing fingers here because I admit I've done it too. But we don't always think about it until we come face to face with it. Perhaps you have been a victim of the beast. Think back. Do you remember the pain you felt when you faced intolerance just because you were different? Do you remember when you faced indifference? Because like Pat Harper and so many others, well, your situation, that's your problem. And do you remember when you faced ignorance like that of those villagers? Because someone felt as they did, oh, we don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us. Do you remember how deeply it hurt? Perhaps you have participated in acts of intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. Are you guilty of feeding the beast? Is there someone out there, someone in your workplace, someone in your neighborhood, someone in your home who has heard your beast roar? Oh, my friends, do they not deserve a second chance? As the film Beauty and the Beast concludes, the beast dies. And in his place, because of Belle's love, aha, you guessed it, a handsome prince lives. You see, Belle gave him a second chance. Don't you just love it? My children did. It's a perfect fairy tale ending. But that story is a fantasy. Reality, as we know, is not so romantic. And the fantasy will never become reality unless we attack the beast, the real beast. Intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. Yes, let's kill the beast, because everyone deserves a second chance. Thank you.
All right, I am so excited to have our next guest on the summit. It is Mark Brown, the 1995 world champion of public speaking. Mark, great to have you with us today.
Hey, Lance, good to be here. I mean, I hear about 1990s. Not many of us are still doing too much in Toastmasters. But yeah, I can't believe I won this thing 10 years before you did. But hey, we're brothers, and I'm glad to be here on the summit with you today.
Yeah, the line does blur after a while, doesn't it? It's, when it's new, it's sort of like, wow, I'm new. And then all of a sudden you look back and you go, it's almost a lifetime ago that.
Well, I did the math, and it's 23 plus years at the time of this recording. And where did 23 years go? I mean, I've been involved in Toastmasters for so long. The years do tend to run together. And I realize it's been 23 years since I won that contest. And that's pretty cool. I'm still around. They still want me around. So that's also cool.
Let's go back to the beginning. Just so everybody knows, you're not from America, from the North, or from the United States originally. You got that beautiful Jamaican accent. You grew up in Jamaica. What was your move to the U.S.? Where'd you come? What was going on in your life to get you out of Jamaica and come to the United States?
Sure. Well, context. Right now I live in central Georgia, about 2 hours south of Atlanta. I live in the country. and there's deer in my backyard every single day. Before that, I spent 27 years in New York State. I moved from Jamaica when I was 18. My father, back then, my late dad, had the opportunity to leave this third world country. He wasn't doing poorly. We were a middle-class family, pretty much. But he saw the opportunity that the U.S. could offer to his then 3 teenage kids. I have an older brother and a younger sister, so I'm the middle child without people. And he saw a chance to move to the USA. And his sister, my aunt, who was living in the Bronx, New York, agreed to be a sponsor, and he followed through on this. So at 18, my dad said, well, listen, you go to New York, you live with your aunt, and I'll go to Florida and start my life over back there. And you got to understand, my dad to me is a hero of great courage, because to start over, sell everything you have, and to go to a foreign country at 47 with a wife, 3 teenage kids, and not much capital was a big risk for him. He was bold. I mean, the more I think about it now, the more guts I see my dad had. But he gave me all he could at the time, and that was $40 U.S. The year was 1980. For those who are doing the math, we're now recording this in 2018 in the early fall, and that I was 18 years old, and now I'm 57. But at 18, I had $40, 2 suitcases, living with my aunt in the Bronx, New York. I'm a divorced mother of 2 small kids with emotional problems, and she added me to the mix. That may sound kind of scary, but here's a positive thing. I realized even more deeply the power of family. Here she is divorced, 2 kids in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, and she gave me her daughter's twin bed. So she and her daughter slept on her bed, which was really a box spring and a mattress, but just to give me a chance to get my feet wet and to find a new life in America. So here I am, 18 years old, $40, had to find a job right away, which I did in 24 hours, working at a bank as a bank teller trainee for the whopping sum of $136 a week before taxes. That was how I came to America with a heavy Jamaican accent and having to deal with customers and human beings and people. And I tried to adjust, made a couple of critical mistakes, and lost my job right out of teller training. And I was given a choice of being fired or going to work in the safe deposit vault with a bunch of retired, dirty old men. And it was not the most ideal situation, but I had a job, so I took it. It was a pay cut, but I took it. And then within a few months, I took an aptitude test for computer programming while working at the Dollar Savings Bank on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, New York. And in 1981, I was accepted as a computer programmer trainee, and I was I got a huge raise. I was like $190 a week before tax. I was making like $9,000 a year, man, as a computer programmer trainee at this bank in the Bronx. But banking at the time in the early 80s was kind of volatile. And there were mergers, acquisitions, takeovers. I went from one bank to another. I went to a third bank to absorb the first bank. And then they were going through a merger, and it got really crazy. And I got out of the banking field. And I was in IT, but I went to work for a company called Reader's Digest on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1992. I went to work at Reader's Digest. And the week I was there, a fellow who I had met, who I had known before, told me that they have a Toastmasters club at Reader's Digest and I should join. When he said Toastmasters, it got my attention. Why, you may ask, and I'm glad you did. Because in the late 80s, I had an uncle in Jamaica who was a Supreme Court judge who had come to New York to visit, and he was wearing a Toastmasters pin on his lapel. I didn't know what it was. I asked him, I said, what's that? He said, a Toastmasters pin. And he explained the program to me, public speaking and that kind of thing. I was interested, and I parked it in the back of my brain somewhere. So when Milton, my friend at Reader's Digest, said, oh, we have a Toastmasters club, I said, oh, Toastmasters. My uncle did that. Little did I know at the time, my uncle was the first Toastmaster on the island of Jamaica.
Wow.
My uncle, the late Supreme Court Justice Courtney Scipio Orr, had brought the Toastmasters program to the island in 1984. And I did not know at the time he was a pioneer. He was the first Toastmaster in the country. I didn't even know that. But I heard about Toastmasters. I went to a meeting within the first 4 days of Reader's Digest. First week of December. And I was overwhelmed and completely intimidated to the point, Lance, where I kept going back as a guest at Reader's Digest Toastmasters for more than 4 months.
Let me ask you a question, Mark, as you're doing that. What did you know about Toastmasters? Your uncle talked to you about it. Did you have any idea of the scope or size of the organization?
No
what
clue.
the meetings are like?
Clue.
Okay.
I thought it was a bunch of people who get together to learn how to speak gooder, So, so I know, to learn how to speak well. So I figured, okay, I can learn from them. And they were not, listen, they were managers and employees. They're in finance and accounting and business. And these were people who were, one guy was in the mailroom, and they came to the meetings every Thursday at lunchtime. And there were some very, very good speakers there. And I thought, I can learn from them, but do I want to join? No. And the weird thing is, Reader's Digest fully sponsored membership for its employees. So I had no excuse for not joining the club.
Uh-huh.
And eventually, in the spring of 1993, I did join Reader's Digest Toastmasters Club. And I was enjoying the experience. And at the time, I had no clue the potential of what the program could offer. I had no idea they had a contest that could lead to worldwide recognition. I mean, that wasn't even on my radar. It was go and learn. And eventually, I think it must have been May or something, I gave my icebreaker, which I read word for word from a script that was printed on a dot matrix printer in 1993. And
Okay.
I forgot this.
No, it's good. Let's go back, because I want the Toastmasters that listen to this to really get an idea where you were in your life when you walked in. What was going on with your speaking ability? I mean, what were you struggling with as a speaker? Because you joined in 93, you wound up winning the World Championship as 95, which is pretty impressive. Okay, I mean, just 2 years in the Toastmasters, and I've always, in my seminars, I go, you have to find your own style. I wish I had the voice of Mark Brown. I don't have the voice of Mark Brown. Okay? But
You're very kind.
My voice, and that's what I've got to use. But you have this incredible, like an FM radio, beautiful voice, presence, everything like that. But where were you when you first came into Toastmasters, reading from your dot matrix printer? What was going on with Mark Brown at that point?
Well, here's the thing. I believe now, with all my heart, I have had an untapped gift. And I want to clarify what I mean by that. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what I knew. I didn't know that there was a raw talent there. And to explain that, I have to go forward and then go back. After I won the Title 95, a fellow Toastmaster in New York challenged me, and he said, Mark, look back over your life. Maybe you will find you were meant to do this, but never realized it. And I literally took some time for personal stock taking. In my review, I remembered I was 6, 7, 8 years old in Sunday school at a little Baptist church in Kingston, Jamaica, reciting poetry at our Sunday school anniversary in front of 300 people, no fear. I recall being in the 7th grade at my junior high school. At the end of the year, they had every grade had to do a reading at Christmas time for a Christmas program. I was chosen to be the 7th grade reader. I looked at my high school years when I was appointed. I was a student council president, and we had events at our schools. And in typical British fashion, because Jamaica was a colony until 1962 of Britain, with a British education system, the standard is whenever you have an event at the school, someone has to deliver what's called a vote of thanks at the end. We may call them closing remarks here in America, but it's called the vote of thanks for a reason. You thank all the visiting dignitaries. So here I am. I'm 17 years old at high school, and I'm called upon to deliver a vote of thanks to thank the Secretary of Education for coming to our high school for an event. And everyone who's there has to receive my thanks with comments. And I deliver that with no notes, ad lib, flawless. I come to New York, and I'm involved in a church ministry, and they have a thing called Friend Day, and they asked me to offer greetings and welcome everybody on behalf of our board. And we had somebody who welcomed them for the women's ministries, for the men, for the youth, and I come up. I deliver my greeting for the board, and I'm the only one who gets applause. In the early 90s, I'm coaching high school football. Sorry, soccer to Americans, football to the audience. And I'm coaching a girls' varsity team as the assistant coach. It's the worst team in the league. We're like 0-9. We're going to go to our last game, and the head coach on the bus says, team talk, Coach Brown, you do it. So I get up and I deliver a team talk. I don't know what I said. It was totally ad lib. It was up from the heart. And our best player, I never forget her, Monica Selberg. Her father was like a Dutch diplomat. Our best player. And she ran herself to the ground that game. She was so exhausted. We had 10 minutes to go in the game. I pulled her and I called the paramedics to check on her, give her oxygen. And they said, she can't go back in. I said, Monica, you're giving your best. 0-0. We're held into a tie. You know, you've done your best. Your day is over. She almost cried. She is 15 years old, 16 years old. She's almost, Coach, I got to go back. You said, Coach, you said we could win. Coach, on the bus, you said we could. You said. And she was telling me that my speech was so inspirational that she was willing to die on the field for a high school varsity soccer game. I never understood all of that. And the last straw came when I got my old high school yearbook, which I still have in a cabinet somewhere in my den. And I open it to the page where, you know, they make fun of the senior students and their classmates write little things about them. And they wrote, my peers wrote in my high school yearbook, always seen in the center of a crowd relating one of his experiences. His destiny is to become a politician.
Wow.
In the 1970s, when I was a teenager, I go back 6 years old, 11 years old, 17 years old, coaching high school, being involved in my church. I realized my high school peers saw me as a speaker, and I never saw myself in that light until I realized I never got nervous in front of an audience. I can remember one day we were on a bus ride going somewhere, a school trip with different schools, and there were two guys who potentially were going to be in a conflict. And I stepped in, introed myself, began to have a conversation, and I completely quelled the quarrel totally. And somebody said, you are the arbitrator. You just know how to use words, and your language is so great. My father would say he'd hear me and guys arguing outside in the yard, my neighbors, and I always made great points. I could always acquit myself well vocally, and I never knew any of this. And the one key thing was I never got nervous addressing an audience of 5 or 500. And it all kind of, so my issue was that I was not used to giving a speech per se, prepared and delivered to be evaluated. So I was intimidated. I really genuinely was, because they seemed so polished, so ready. They knew exactly what to say, how to say it, how to use words well. And I was actually selling myself short, not knowing that given the opportunity through the Toastmasters program, I could get the rough edges smoothed off, and maybe somewhere underneath all of this, there was a potential of a gem coming through. And I discovered that 3 years later.
Wow. I just want to comment on something regarding Toastmasters, because what you're describing is you had a very natural talent that was so easy for you. And usually the things we're really good at, I've found in my life, are relatively easy for us. So at least I've had a tendency to discount my ability where something's really easy because there's no effort I put into it. It's the thing that I struggle with that I think that I need to work on, and I think I'm weak, and I need to improve myself. And that's why in Toastmasters, one of the things I go over in the evaluation programs that I teach and I learned and that we practice in my club, I said it's just as important to tell the speaker what they're doing right as it is what they're doing wrong, because what they're doing right is probably very easy for them, and they don't even know they're doing it right because they're so good at it. And if you focus on the negative, then they stop doing the things they're supposed to be doing right. And so I'm looking back in your youth, if there was somebody around potentially, it probably didn't happen, as it sounds like, until after you won the world championship. They got you to look at that, but somebody could have gotten you to Mark Brown to look at that possibly when he was in high school and said, you are so natural, you do this so effortlessly.
It's really weird. And that was reinforced to me after I won the title. You know, I win a title on a Saturday morning. in San Diego, and I fly across the country back to New York. Monday morning, I'm at Reader's Digest at my desk. What am I doing? I'm typing computer code. That was my life. So that was great. But the total validation came at work in a phone call. I don't know how long I was in after I won. It was several weeks, but I get a phone call one morning, on Monday, from Ken Nelson. Now, Ken Nelson was the senior vice president in charge of IT. And in the hierarchy on the food chain, I'm like 4 deep. You know, I got to report to Fern Karp. She reports to George Cushing, and George reports to Vern Thompson, and Vern reports to to Dick Brandt, and Dick Brandt reports to Ken Nelson. See, I'm like 5 levels deep. I'm plankton here. And this man calls my phone, and I say, hello, it's, hello, Mark. Yeah, it's Ken Nelson here. I'm like, Ken Nelson? Why is he calling me? He doesn't even know who I am. And then he asked me the ultimate question. He says, Mark, why do you work for me? I said, what do you mean, sir? He says, Mark, I've heard you speak. You gave your speech at our IT team meeting. Said, yes. You also spoke for the company's exec committee. I said, yes. I know what you can do. You are skilled, you are gifted, you are talented. And I just can't see me having a talent like you and forcing you to sit at a desk writing code all day. It's up to us to find a better place to use your skills, to use your gifts, and to use your talents.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, well, thank you. I'm going to work on it and get back to you. Thank you. Now, I didn't understand in 1995 the power of what this means until I began to really process this. Now, Lance, here is a senior VP of IT at a major publishing company in the USA. He has someone on his team who clearly is doing a good job as an IT professional, but he is willing to release a good IT professional because there might be something better for them to do and a more worthwhile use of your gifts, talents, and abilities. And I don't know about you, Lance, but I'm pretty sure there are individuals out there who they were Ken Nelson, had a good programmer who was doing a good job, would say, you know what? It's nice. He won a trophy, but I need him. I'm going to keep it.
Right.
And Ken called me personally and told me that he was telling me he valued the gift he saw more than what I could do as an IT pro. He said, I can always find and hire a new IT pro. I can't duplicate that. We've got to find a way to use that and use that well. So
that speaks so highly of that organization because,
yes.
A lot of what I've done outside my speaking world is actually building effective teams and turning companies around and creating teams that win and trying to maximize the individual's contribution and get them to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And you're exactly right. In a large corporation, to have a senior manager go, what are we doing? We need to utilize this person better than we're utilizing him. It shows a very confident leader in that area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always look at it in that way because, it's a sign of a good corporate culture and truly valuing your resources in the best way possible.
Exactly. So let's go back to that icebreaker. You're moving through it, and I've had this happen in my life where I'm really good at something, and I invalidate myself, right? And which is come back to validate yourself, and everything. But I invalidate my abilities because I haven't gone through necessarily the training or something. I'm already at a certain level, right? But I think I have to start down, which is sort of sounds like what you were doing. So you go through all this trying to learn something you already do naturally. Well, so tell me what was going on with your first few speeches and what was your runway into Toastmasters like? What were you struggling with? What were you learning about yourself, or what was your experience?
The truth is, because my uncle did it, I'll try and see if I can become better at this. And because I was intimidated, I was so intimidated, I thought I had to write the perfect script, insert humor here, put a nice word in there. So I was doing it very mechanically at first. It was not at all spontaneous. And by the way, I appreciate the fact you made your speech look almost spontaneous, both you and Willie Jones, when you gave your final speech. That was not my paradigm at the time. It was, okay, I've got to write a speech between 4 and 6. How about myself? Okay, how did I get here? Where am I from? How can I get a good line? I have a good line. I got a great one in line. They'll say, how did I get here? I took the Sawmill Parkway. Haha. And the audience laughed. So it was literally, it was mechanical. It was how to literally write a speech that fits into a 4 to 6 minute window, that has some humor in it, that tells them about me. So I was almost pedantically following the requirements of the manual. I've got to fulfill the manual requirement. And I didn't really, at the time, understand, hey, your audience wants to get to know you and not always adhering strictly to the requirements of the manual. And I think that may also be an issue that many Toastmasters face. They're given the manual at first, it was 25 years ago, 26 years ago, and you're told, okay, I've got to meet those requirements. So my mind at the time was fit into the box.
Okay. And then, so this is like, you said it was like, what, May of 93, you're doing your first Icebreaker?
Yeah, 25 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
25 years.
And as you progress along, are you continuing to do your speeches along that line? Was there anything that sort of broke open for you, or you started to feel you're sort of coming to your own on the Toastmasters experience, the speaking experience?
Happily, it became part of my life, part of my routine almost. It's Toastmasters. I didn't want to miss. I liked it. I liked the people. I liked the experience I was getting. I liked the tips and tools. I liked the evaluations, not just for me. I learned pretty early on, evaluations are not just for the speaker, they're for everyone. And some speakers don't realize, I could use that. Oh, that's for me. I never saw that before. I'm going to try that. So I was learning that process and beginning to realize I could improve. And then that fall, they had a thing called Humorous Contest. And I entered my club humorous contest with a speech entitled Life's Embarrassing Moments. And all I did was string together a series of embarrassing things that happened to me. There was really no point to it. I think I won my club contest and I went to area and lost, but I didn't understand the idea of writing a speech to make people laugh, but make a point and have a message. Clueless. I didn't know, but I was just going along, going to meetings, filling roles. And the goal wasn't, I'm going to be the next great speaker in the world. It was very social, but also educational, and it was part of my life.
Okay.
And there was no one day I'm going to be. That wasn't in my mind. Matter of fact, that November of 1993, I remember receiving the Toastmaster magazine, and the cover had 2 photographs. It was Dana Lamont, the 1992 world champion, receiving his trophy in Las Vegas, and the 1993 world champion Otis Williams Jr. from Cincinnati receiving his trophy from Neil Wilkinson in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I distinctly recall saying, wow, these 2 guys are world champions. I could never even think of doing that. And I parked it and never gave it a second thought. I had no clue. I mean, it was just wasn't even my radar, literally. Didn't even occur to me to pursue that.
So what was you did your humorous contest and made it to area. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was your entree into the international speech? And we've had these conversations. I want you to share your story because we've talked a lot, Mark, and I love your story. So I want you to share it with everybody here. So 94 rolls around, right? 94 rolls around, and
I don't know how many people will tell you that they entered their club international speech contest completely by accident. But I'll tell you, I did. In the winter of 1993, I think it was February, or maybe up into March for all I know. It was late in the game. The club announced we're doing 2 contests. We're doing international speech, and some people call it, the serious speech. It had a wrong name, the serious versus the humorous. People, have you ever heard that before, Lance? They say the serious speech contest.
I've never heard the serious speech contest. So anyway,
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I have been called Toastmaster of the Year. I've been called all different things because it is misnomers. But they also say they're going to do an evaluation contest. And that was the beginning of the year. I must have had my 6 speeches in. And I said, okay, we're all encouraged to participate in some way. Mark, what about this? You'll give a speech, he'll evaluate you and let you know what you can do better. I thought, well, okay, I'll do a speech for evaluation contest. I'll do that. And I had an idea for a speech, so I got a 3x5 card, and I wrote down 3 bullet points as the points of my speech. The title was called "Say What About How We Communicate," and I had literally 3 points, 3 bullets on a 3x5 card. That's my 5 to 7 minute contest speech. And so that way, I'll have these evaluators tell me how poorly I did, how good I did, and give me help to be better as I go forward. That was the only goal in mind. Now, we're a corporate club meeting at lunchtime at Reader's Digest. At noon, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, 2 hours to go, I get a phone call in the office from my club mentor, who's also back then our area governor before they were directors. And she said, Mark, I just found out, Dennis can't compete in the ISC. Will you change hats and compete in the international? I'll get someone else to be target speaker for the contest. I figured I'm going to speak anyway, so sure, I'll do it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what it means. So I said, yeah. And so contest, and 2 hours later, I'm in this contest. I do my speech with my 3 bullet points, and I sit down, and they tell me I won the contest. I thought that was cool. That was fun. So I'm done. And they said, no, you're not done. You're not done. You have to go area next. Area? What's area? The next level. Oh, in the contest, humorous. Okay, I can do that. When is the contest? They said, tonight. I said, 5 hours. I said, well, okay, I have time. We're having it right here. Oh, cool. I'll stay late. I'll work late. And at 6, I'll go to the contest and I'll drive home tonight. No problem. So I did it. And I gave my same speech with no script, basically ad-lib with 3 bullet points. And I was placed second. And I said, great, that was fun. So, I'm back to my routine. No. You get to go on to another level. I said, another level? What do you mean? I didn't win the contest. Well, Mark, we have a division level after this. Well, okay, I lost. Yeah, but see, in Toastmasters, we're in a small area, 4 clubs, a small division, like 3 to 4 divisions. And the rule is, in a division with 4 or fewer areas, the district will allow first and second to advance to the next level, which means you get to compete at division. Is that okay? I'm like, okay. So whenever it was, a few weeks later, I go to the division, and Mary was there, the lady who beat me was also there. I beat her. I won division. I got vindication. I'm done. And I said, but wait, you're not done. What? There's more? I said, yes, you will have to now compete at district. I said, district, let me guess. It's bigger than division, right? I said, yep. I said, so how big is a district? Well, it's several. It's getting parts of New York, it's parts of New Jersey, Staten Island, and they have a conference coming up in New Jersey, and all the division champions, there's like 9 of them throughout the district, are going to go and compete. 9 of us? Yeah. Okay, when? It's on a Sunday in New Jersey. What time out? You say Sunday? Yeah. Well, I'm a man of faith. I got to go to church. I play piano. I'm involved in my church. And they said, Mark, you understand you're a division champion. I know, but I got to go to church, man. I need God, The division governor got in front of me and she said, you understand? You're the division champion. You got to go. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go. And I hitched a ride with a guy in White Plains, New York, and one more Toastmaster and I were in his car, drove across the George Washington Bridge into New Jersey for this district conference. Now, I'm used to, 12 in the club and 20 in the area and 35 in the division. I get to this district conference halfway through the morning. The contest is after lunch, and there's 250 people there, and I know 3 of them. And I do the briefing, and I think it's like 8 contestants. I'm number 7 of 8, something like that. And fine. I bring a Bible as a prop. Is all I have is a prop. And again, I have no script, just ideas in my head. And something funny happens next. The audience is larger, and they laugh at anything. I could have said, hey, today is Sunday, and they bust out laughing. So they're having a good time, and so am I. And the lights are there. Green means you're close, you're good. Yellow means you're getting close. And I kind of saw the lights, and I was going, having a good time. They're laughing. And the guy who brought me with him, I'll call him Rich, is in the back of the room, and I see Rich. He's doing this. And I figured, I think he wants me to wind my speech up. I look down, the red light's on, I wind the speech up, I leave, I go back next to him, and he says, Mark, I think you may have gone over time. And I gave the answer that no serious speech contestant wants to hear. My answer was, that's okay. I had fun anyway. It's all good. Because as you know, Lance, many contestants invest years hoping they get to a district contest so they can at least compete for a chance to move on. I had fallen into this thing backwards by accident a couple of months earlier. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no script. Lo and behold, I am declared the winner. And I find out then I have to now compete at what was called the region back then. And I'm finally beginning to get that this is a bigger deal. And the funny thing is, you're told that officials should destroy the ballots and nobody reveals timers' reports. I found out later that I had spoken for 7 minutes and 29 seconds in that district contest, which I had then won. And I then found out I had to go to St. John, New Brunswick, Canada in June for the Region 7 contest. And I had to write a new speech for this. I'm now beginning to understand the scope is bigger. It's when I win my district, I then realize, bing, those two photographs on the cover of the magazine back in November about these guys being world champions, I'm on that journey. I had no clue. And there are those who might be annoyed hearing this, but it's my truth. It's my life. I write a new speech, which also is not memorized word for word. The idea is there. And I go to St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. I deliver my speech, and they're going to announce the winners. And I did not understand this, but at these events at district, region, and the national and region, they have visiting Toastmasters royalty. We have our international director from Region 7, and somebody came in from like China, and we had, so there's all these people on the platform, and I'm announced as the winner. I'm thrilled. I'm shocked. I go up to get my trophy from Bash Touré, who was our second-year director or that year. And I shake a few hands and I blow by. I'm with Bash. I'm beaming. I'm smiling. I got my trophy. And they gave a short speech afterwards. And I realized, I'm told later that night, who was on the platform. It was Bash Touré, director. There was Joe Jarzenbeck, second-year director, and a man named Neil Wilkinson, who was the Toastmasters International president, who was living in Canada. I had no clue who this guy was. I blew him off completely because I wanted to get my trophy. And Neil and I will laugh about this. I see Neil every couple of years at a convention, and we'll laugh about this. I mean, he was a president. I had no clue who he was. I was that green. And I had entered my contest on minimum 6 speeches. When I won that contest, I made a decision. I'm going to go to the World Championship. I have to get my CTM, what's now a CC, had to get my competition Toastmaster before I get to that final in August in 1994. And it turns out that when the week I was leaving New York to go to Louisville, Kentucky, in the mail, I got my certificate saying I got my CTM the week of the World Championships. Wow. I got my features in, got it approved. But that's how green I was, not knowing what I was doing. But that was my journey in 1994.
Let me ask you a quick question on the difference between district and region. When you said you went bing, all of a sudden, those guys on the magazine, I'm on this path. You sort of have an awakening, like, oh my gosh, I might be somebody, right?
No, it's funny because, honestly, I won the district. I went to Canada, won there, and while I was there, I met a man named Daniel Rex, who was then the director of marketing at Toastmasters. He's now our CEO. So we go back 24 years, Dan and I, a long way. We shared a cab ride from the airport from the hotel to the airport in a Matchbox. I'm 6'1", he's 6'4". With our knees and our chin like this for like 20 minutes in the car ride. You get kind of close to a guy under those circumstances. But I got back to Reader's Digest. I was in my office one day, and Michael Caine, who was our club president, very experienced, really good guy, one of the smoothest speakers I've ever met in my life, just natural. He called me in his office one day and said, Mark, you understand this is big? This is big. This is big, 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 big. This is big. And I just never got it. I never got it the first year. I just didn't get it until I went to Kentucky, saw Otis Williams Jr. He's here. The reigning world champion. Oh, and I looked at this guy. I looked at this guy, all 5'6" of him, and I am in the presence of greatness. I think that's when it hit me how big this thing was. I was at the event with my pregnant wife and my 2 small kids, and I realized this is awesome, and, briefing comes in and I end up, and I drew. I didn't draw. I became speaker number 1 by default because at the briefing, we're at a long conference, U-shaped conference table, right? And they start the draw here, work their way back, across and back up here. And I was at this end because I wanted to be near the door so I could leave quickly. There's a guy named Tony next to me. We were the last 2 guys. And they drew all these cards, and there were 2 cards left, 9 and 1. Tony drew card number 9, and by default, I became speaker number 1 in 94 without drawing. One more bit of trivia, but that's just kind of part of the journey for me. Yeah, but I didn't really get it until pretty much got it.
Yeah, the thing I was going to ask was there, and I thought it might have been between district and regional, because what I know can happen, and I know on my journey, which was considerably different than yours, there's our comfort zone that we have, and then we push outside our comfort zone. And to a certain degree, when you're describing, you didn't understand it. You were just going to go give a speech to some people, and you had your 2 points, and you were very much inside your comfort zone. Then all of a sudden you realize where you are, and you have this awakening, and you find yourself outside your comfort zone all of a sudden. Was there any point where all of a sudden you got, let's say you changed, and here's what I know, Mark, a lot of times we're successful because there's a certain insouciance, a certain carefreeness about us, and a certain relax, and we're not taking it seriously. And all of a sudden we take it seriously, and we go, oh my gosh, now it's serious, it's hard, I got to work hard, and we lose what makes us really good because we go make it serious, and we decide it's going to be hard and it's going to be tough and I got to work hard. Was there anything like that happened where you transitioned and you sort of lost that flippancy that you had?
When Mike said, this is big, this is big, this is big, 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 and I reflected on the magazine cover with the other champions, it changed. That became a thing now. I've got to do this. I didn't know what resources, who could I ask? Who could I talk to? There was one gentleman who had been in the 89 final from New York, Mark Laverne. So I consulted with him. I got hold of 2 audio cassettes of 1990 with David Brooks and 1989, 1990, and 1986 or whatever. I heard Arabella Bengtson, We Can Be Pygmalion. I heard her, and I heard David Brooks, who's a voice on an audio cassette you put in your car when you wind the window down and there's no AC.
You crank the front to start the car.
Fan on hot, But that's what I had. And when Mike kept saying big, 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 that got my attention.
Okay.
And I had to begin to work at it. And so somebody arranged for me to go to New York City and speak to clubs down there. And I was, I had Churchill quotes in my speech and all of them. Once, no, you don't want to get caught up in all that stuff. Tell your story kind of thing and talk about your own life. I had no clue how this all worked. I wasn't coached. I didn't understand the power of what our own story can bring. I didn't know it back then. So I've come a long way. And what I've learned and I'm learning is what I now teach. And I'm teaching every single day. But that point for me was when Michael told me how big it was. And sometimes ignorance can be bliss. You're less pressured. But when you know the stakes, you go, oh my gosh, now what do I do?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what happened in '94? And you speaker number 1, and what was the experience?
Well, I tell you what, I did not know how green was I. I understand now, and look, we're 21st century. We got YouTube. We can go on demand. We can review every contest speech for the last, I don't know, 8, 10 years, I guess. If you get the DVDs from Bill Stevens, you can go, 25 years. You can see every speaker. I had no access to what happened in 93. I didn't know where it was. I had no clue. All I know was this guy named Otis Williams had won it. And I got to see the convention. I go to my briefing, and one of the guys there is a guy with a big old handlebar mustache named Morgan MacArthur. I didn't know Morgan MacArthur was second to Otis in 1993. I didn't know who this guy was. No clue. I go to the briefing, not knowing anybody, and so it's fine. I speak at number one, so I go in and I'm going to give my speech the best I can. And, I had a mustache back then. It was kind of funny. But for about 2 seconds, I saw number one. I was like, nervous. I don't want to go first. I want to go first. But then I accepted it. I chose to get ready and do the best I can with what I have. So I gave the best I had to give in 94 in October. And I didn't understand the whole idea of me being a young speaker being in the final until the contestant interviews, where I was speaker number one. Speaker number two was a man from Australia named Jock Elliott. Jock Elliott had been in the finals in 1990, in 93, where he spoke 1 second overtime, 7:31, and back in 94. And Jock eventually became the world champion in 2011 after 21 years of being in the final, okay? But in his interview, he was speaker number two, and they always ask you, name, club, where you're from, and then they ask, how long have you been a Toastmaster? I said, I think my official record, like 14 months since I forget. I didn't know what months. It was less than 2 years.
Yeah, how many days?
And they asked, how long have you been a Toastmaster? And Jock said, a few months more than Mark, actually. It's been 19 years, and I get very irritated by people like Mark. And but Jock had been in for 19 years. So in 1995, Jock had been in for 20 years. In 05, he'd been in for 30 years. So in 2011, he had been a Toastmaster for 36 years before he won a world championship. I didn't understand that people were really working for years at this because I kind of fell into it along for the ride. So I'll just keep going and see where it leads me. And the ride took me to the Galt House, Louisville, Kentucky, in August 1994 as a finalist in the World Championship. Never expected it, never dreamed it, but certainly enjoyed it. Did I want to win? Sure. Looking back, did I have the quality to win? No, not at the time. But it was a great learning experience. And it led to a relationship that transformed my speaking. I met David Brooks that day.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So that was the relationship with David Brooks. What happened? So let's roll forward to 95. So first year you go all the way to the finals, which is amazing. And
right.
That wasn't my story. So
I hear that.
That wasn't my story, but amazing. And so you come back in 95. Is your mindset like, I'm a contender, I can do this, I'm going to work hard on it, I've been there, I want to win it? Or was it sort of your flippant insouciance that you had the year before? Where were you mentally, and where were you ability-wise?
I choose A. Different attitude. And that's because of David Brooks. Real quickly, I did not place. As you know, Lance, back then, it's a Saturday morning contest. When the contest is over, the ballroom clears in like half an hour. It's a ghost town. I'm alone in the ballroom with my 7-year-old son, Joel, on my lap, and he's crying because Daddy didn't win. Daddy, you cried so hard, you didn't win, it's not fair. And David Brooks walks up and he says, excuse me, Mark, I don't mean to interrupt a tender family moment, but I'm not sure I'll see you again. I'm leaving very shortly. You have some talent. You're good. Yeah, if I can give any service to you, if I can help you, just give me a call. And he gave me a business card and he was gone. I took it away. And the following day, we flew home Sunday from Louisville. I got home, unpacked my things, saw David's card in my pocket. I picked up my house phone and called David Brooks that afternoon. And when I called him, I said, hello, David Brooks, please. This is he. David, it's Mark Brown speaking. Do you remember me? And he says, Mark, I met you yesterday. I said, well, you you said you would help me. Are you serious? He said, yes. I said, will you help me? He said, yes. That one question, will you help me? 4 words, and his answer, yes, was the beginning of a transformation. Now watch this. I didn't find out till later David Brooks was in the habit of writing notes to every finalist to encourage them and also offering his services to any who would accept them. He is one champion, and back in our day, 8 runners-up. Of the 8 runners-up, or the 8 also-rans, David made the offer of support to 7 of us. And it turns out I was the only one who said yes to it. And to encourage me, he wrote me a note, and he said in his letter, and for the millennials who are watching this, a letter is a piece of paper that you write on. It's a good paper. You write on that.
And he used this thing with lead, and it's got wood surrounded with it, and the lead rubs off on the paper.
He said, although our contact so far has been limited to only a few brief exchanges, your words and manner lead me to believe that you are a talented speaker and one with whom I would be honored to confer. And Lance, after I closed my dictionary, I realized he was telling me that I was talented and he was willing to help me. And our mentorship was what we call old school mentorship, by phone and by fax. When I say phone, I mean landline. Landline is a thing with a cord on a thing, and you put it on a receiver. It's a landline. And the fax machine is a machine with a roll of paper you put in there, and it comes out, and it gets cut by a blade, and it unfurls. But we had phone and fax, and our mentorship lasted several months, obviously, and he guided me through the whole process. So in 95, my mindset was different. I was much more confident. But the funny thing is, at my club contest, I finished second. At the club, the year I won. But the rule in Toastmasters is, in an area with 4 or fewer clubs, first and second get to advance. I got my second chance, and I rode that thing, club, area, division, district. And at district level, Dave and I got serious together. You know, I didn't want to waste this time. And if I can get myself going from club, area, division, if I can win district, I'll get serious with David. And he was cool with that. But all the while, ideas, thoughts, suggestions, techniques, tools, principles, he kept pouring into me. And I went to a region in June when I wanted to win so badly I could taste it. But the story about region is a unique one in that I was preparing for it, my second speech, and I just didn't have anything going on. I was at work late one evening at my office. There's nobody there, and I felt this wave of inspiration. Began to type furiously on my desktop computer with the CR, the green and cathode ray tube CRT, and I pushed back from my desk and I read it, and it looked pretty good. And I heard a voice say, "That's what you need to talk about in Columbia, Maryland in June. There'll be someone there who needs to hear it." Now, I'm not trying to go crazy on you, but literally, only twice in my life have I heard a voice talk to me like that. I pushed back, looked around, there's nobody there. And I figured, okay, God, it's a divine thing. I want to win. You're telling me it isn't about me. And that was hard to accept. The day of the contest, I was getting ready to go down to the ballroom for the contest. And I remember being in my hotel room by my bedside saying, I really want to win this. I want one more shot at the final. But God, you said, for somebody else, so I'll go give my best. I gave my best, delivered a speech called Press On, about putting the past behind us and pressing on. And I spoke for 7 minutes and 24 seconds. 7:24, wasn't too bad. At the end, I was declared the winner. Then President Pauline Shirley met me and said, Mark, 3 words she had for me was double the energy. And I took it and back of mind, double the energy. Okay, I'll do that. I got all these back slaps and handshakes, and I got a great compliment. Mark, we love your speech. Nobody died. It was great, And in the middle of all, as a woman comes to me, 5'7", 5'8", brown hair, maybe early 30s, eyes red, tear-streaked face, and she comes right up to me and says, Mark, thank you for that speech. It was just for me.
Wow.
I'm going, whoa, you're the one She said, huh? I said, it's going to sound freaky, I know, but trust me. I was told, audibly told, as I was getting ready for this weeks ago, I had to give this particular speech because there's someone here who needs to hear it. And you have just identified yourself as that someone. So thank you for telling me that I did the right thing. And for the first time, I really began to think of my speech as for the audience. It's nice to use great words, use your voice. I've been told I have a nice voice. I'm thankful for that. But it really hit me. I have an opportunity to speak to the audience. Didn't forget that. And back in 94, when I lost, I told myself, if I ever get to go back to the final, I've got an idea, a speech on integrity. I'm going to work on that, deliver that. I want the audience to know about integrity and to feel I'm going to message for them. And I spent 6 weeks from June till the middle of August working on a speech that was garbage. And I sent David Brooks a note, a letter. And I said, David, this is not my best work. You, my audience, my family, and my God deserve better. I was at a low point in my speech prep process for the World Championships. And he said, think about this. Maybe you have something you've done before that you can rework, you can revive, you can upgrade, and that might be a good idea for your speech. And I took that idea, that advice, went back, reviewed my Region 7 speech in 1994. Took that one, it was called Take a Second Look, and I began to revise it. It became a second chance. This is now beginning of August. This is like August. And I said, well, is it going to work? I need to test it. So I called a past Toastmasters president, by the way, not at the time. He had been a finalist in 92. He came second in the world. His name is Dilip Abhyasekara. You know Dilip.
I don't know.
And Dilip said, I said, who can listen to my two speeches, my old and my new? Who can listen to them? And I called Dilip in Delaware from New York on a Wednesday. I said, Dilip, I got to test out my speeches. Can your club help me? He says, let me talk to some people. And he called me back to listen. We can have you come to our meeting. We meet at such a time. It's like a 2-hour ride from New York to Delaware. I got to go through New Jersey into Delaware. And I go to Delaware, give both speeches, and the consensus is the revised old one is the one I should use. I was given advice. It was great. Round up in evaluations, hop in the car, drive back home like midnight to go to work at 8 the following morning. And I begin to work on this at the beginning of August. I got like 2.5 weeks to get this thing ready from scratch. Total rewrite.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Mark, while you're doing this. One of the things that's come up with a lot of the world champions, and it was certainly in my story, Jim Key has a specific example of this, Darren had a specific example of this, that through the process of the competition, there's a moment that humbles us. And we find humility, okay? And there's a progression that I see in speakers where we start off, we're so nervous being up there, we're first of all, we're comfortable just standing on stage. And shortly after that, then it sort of becomes all about me. Look at me. I'm on stage. I'm the powerful one. And then through the process, we wind up being humbled that it is about the audience, that we're not the most important thing in the room, and that we better appreciate who we're talking to. Was this process you're going through of writing a speech and it not being where you were and you're questioning, were you finding a humility in that through that process?
Oh, when I did the third rehearsal of the previous speech on integrity and it fell flat, I realized I was so sure it's gonna kill. They're gonna laugh at my humor. It's gonna be great. And I realized I was borrowing somebody else's humor. It wasn't my work. That was really humbling. I was not anywhere near as good. And I said, David, you, my audience, my family, and my God deserve my best, and this is not it. I was too relaxed. I told myself, I'm going to give the speech. That was in August of 94. I already knew I'm going to give that speech 1 year later when I get to the finals again. And it was like, whoa, dude. And here's the sad truth. I have never given that speech. Never gave it. I put it aside, and the time was gone. It was an idea in my head for 1994. It was not the speech for 95. And the truth is, it has never become the speech. I never, ever gave that speech. Never did. But it
Yeah.
really rattled my cage. I had to work my tail off for 17 days to get the speech ready. So much so my family knew the speech, David Brooks knew the speech, and my physical stage presence coaches, Robin Rand and Gedalia from New York City, I spent 3 hours with them the week of the contest. On a Tuesday, I went to their apartment in New York City and did work on my stage work with them. And they saw my speech, but my friends, they didn't see it. My friends in New York City, they never saw it until I went on that stage that Saturday morning in San Diego. That's the first time 99% of my audience ever saw that speech.
So did you ever practice that at clubs other than the one with Dillips? And wow.
No.
Okay.
I went to Dillips Club in Delaware just as a test. Is it worth my while to work on this? And there was no clubs locally, so I was willing to drive 2+ hours at night to see if. And that's a different mindset now. It's not I got this. It's can I do this? And it really had to think about what was important and how to do it well. So I did not rehearse anywhere else. I never did a club rehearsal of my speech. So much so, my fellow Toastmasters in New York City, the day before the contest, one of them said to me, the same guy who told me that I had to step my back down and see if I was born for this, David O'Neill, he said, Mark, I hope you polished your speech up from last time, because he knew it wasn't that good. I said, David, come tomorrow and you'll see what I've done. I didn't. Only my family and my coaches saw it until I hit that platform. And now the world has seen it. That's really something else. It's just
it's really something else. And what's interesting, and what I really want to emphasize for the different Toastmasters watching this, and there's 2 points that you're making. One is there's something that I've been asked a lot about, and I know it's come up with you, sort of the champion's mindset, right? And I talk about, one of the things I talk about is nothing sacred in the speech. And, we run into people we coach and they have to tell the story, have to tell the joke. And nothing sacred. But part of the champion's mindset is you were willing to drive 2 hours at night to Delaware to get the feedback you needed. And it wasn't like, oh, that's too far, it's too much work to do. No, I need to do that to get the feedback. That's where it is. And I have my stories of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and drive, in California, it's not hard to drive 2 hours someplace.
Highway to system, I know.
But it's a different mentality than New York. But I would get up to go hit a club that met at 6:30 in the morning, an hour and a half north of LA, right? And it was just like, because that was a top club in the area, and I needed their feedback. I needed those people to see the speech. On that, the other thing is that there's so many people that, as you know, they contact us and they want all the world champions to look at their speech so that they have the perfect speech. And there's this set path that you have to travel, and you have to go to so many clubs, and this is how you rehearse, this is how you practice. The fact is, we each have to figure out what we need. We each have, it's our path, it's our personal path, and we have to figure out what's going to work for us. It amazes me for what I did to prepare for the World Championship that you went to somebody's apartment and worked out your stage movement. I'm like, what? You're in an apartment. You're on this huge stage. How can you work out your stage movement in a New York City apartment? That's nuts.
That's a very good question.
But here's the thing. It worked for Mark Brown. It's what Mark Brown needed to be that great speaker on the stage. I would have had a hard time working out my stage movement in a New York City apartment. That's not what I needed to get there. And so the point I want to make is we each have our path. We each have to figure out what is right for us and know that that's our path from that standpoint.
That's so well said, because, at different times, in different ways, we need different things. And when I say staging, much of it had to do with my demeanor, because, again, you do club era division, even district, it's a smaller room, but I had to get used to bigger movements. And here's why. I saw a clip from 1994 when I saw my video. They gave me the VHS video, yes, VHS, of the 94 contest. And Bill Stevens, the producer, would promote other sessions from the convention. One of those sessions featured Robert Gedalia from New York City, and he was talking about what to do with your hands, how to use gestures effectively. And I thought, I have no clue how that works. This guy's in Manhattan. I can take a train. I can drive my car there and be there in half an hour. Let me call him up, see what he says. And he and Randy were so thrilled I would even ask him. I drove there, spent a few hours there. He wouldn't even let me pay him. He was just glad to help me. And that day in 90, I wore a red tie and a red pocket square. And Robert lent me both those pieces of garment. So I had a piece of Robert Medallia with me on stage. His red power tie and the red pocket square were his. So thank you, Rob and Randy. Rocket Rob, Ravishing Randy. Rocket Rob, who has beaten prostate cancer and been a great mentor to so many people at the SEC Rough Riders Club, New York City. Love you guys. Thank you so much.